Hi, I'm Raya.
And I'm Brandon.
And you're watching
More Love with R&B.
And today we are just talking about some gifs and memes and things that float around the internet. Which can be fun.
Can be.
And it can be exciting and fun ways to express yourself in conversations with family, friends, coworkers, etc.
Yes.
However, especially if you clicked onto this video.
Yep.
You know that sometimes gifs, memes, and things are born out of serious situations and personal
tragedy.
Yeah, that traumatic instances that happen in people's lives, particularly famous celebrities, but sometimes not even famous celebrities, just people who happen to be caught on camera.
This is true.
And so I want to insert a post that was circulating the interwebs recently, and it's been circulating for a while, but it recirculated, and I saw it, and I sent it to Brandon, so I'm just gonna put it right here, about famous men that have been caught crying on camera. We have Tyrese, we have Kanye West, Will Smith, and then we have a little caricature at the bottom that talks about why men apparently don't open up to women, because when they do, we get these memes and gifs. And so I decided to just do a little questionnaire online. I went to the many women's groups and wives groups and marital groups that I'm a part of socially, and asked women a question. Do you think, how did I phrase the question? I said, question, do you consider it weakness for a man to be emotional, i.e. he cries easily or shares his feelings? I posted it to, I believe, seven different groups that I'm a part of, and within a matter of about 5 or 6 hours, I got over 500 posts.
Responses.
Yes.
So I did the same thing, and I posted in a couple of groups of just married men or men in general, and I got quite the responses as well. One of the things I noticed though was that it seems like there's a disconnect in like a societal understanding, because I feel like based on the conversations we've had, like you ask the women and they're like, oh no, that's not weakness, like I love when a man should, like majority wise.
And we'll put some of these posts up as we talk.
The majority of the folks said, oh no, that's not weakness. I love when a man can express himself and shows his sensitive side. And then you had a lot of men that were like, no, it's not weakness. Men should be able to express themselves. And it's like, well, then what's going on in society? Why does it seem like there's this overwhelming feeling that men have to always like suppress and be strong, and whatever the definition of that is in that context, but be like strong and like push down feelings for the sake of like your spouse or your kids, or I'm gonna be strong and I'm not gonna cry because I'm a man, like that whole ordeal. But yet everybody's saying, oh no, I want him to show emotions. Like, okay, but then these gifts are born.
Exactly. And I believe that there were a lot of women who, like Brandon said, liked the intimacy that came with a man sharing his heart and sharing his emotion. There were a couple of women who said that they felt like it was not it should not be in a man's nature to share his emotion that freely. And there were actually some men in the marriage groups that I were a part of that also felt like it was a sign of weakness. They thought, well, Yeah, would you want a man who easily cried watching a movie? I'm like, yeah, I would. If you wanted to.
So here's what we'll do. I'm gonna read. Sorry.
Getting choked up.
Sorry. No, I'm not. But I gotta prove a point. I'm not. No, I'm kidding. I'm gonna read a couple of responses from some of the husbands that I asked these questions to, or this question to. One guy said, balance is key. Healthy emotional management and expression is good. Being controlled by your emotions by raging or the opposite, suppressing your emotions to the point that it eats you up inside is not good. Mm-hmm. And I feel that. I'm like, that is the key here. It's like balance. Like, so some people say like, yeah, I don't want somebody who cries at the drop of a hat because they feel like that's manipulation. And it's just like, oh baby, I don't want you to. It's like, okay, bro, seriously, like, why are you? You know, at the other extreme of that though is someone who is kind of cold emotionally, and men need to be emotionally available, especially married men, for their spouse, especially fathers for their kids, and we'll get to that in a second. Another response said to the question of do you consider it weakness? No. To be quite honest, I'm not sure why a lot of us would hold all of our emotional anguish inside if we're hurting. Long as it is understood by the person I'm expressing my thoughts to and they understand my pain, it's reasonable.
That's reasonable.
That sounds like a pretty reasonable thing. I feel like when we're in situations where if you are with your spouse, but like especially husbands, if your wife is a person that you trust with your emotions, and especially if you have been raised or been around any kind of situation where there was trauma in your childhood and you haven't really dealt with that, kind of need to be there to emote, because chances are that's showing up in your marriage. But we're not going to talk about that right now. Last thing I want to share with you guys, and then we'll just kind of keep with the dialogue. It says, answering the question as it stands, no, it's not weakness. However, I think the deeper conversation is around emotional intelligence and knowing how to recognize if the environment is safe to be vulnerable. So I think that's a nice springboard into the concept of like safety. Like, I think a lot of dudes just don't generally feel safe emotionally. I don't even know that overall we are in a society that teaches what it is like for a man to be safe emotionally, to be able to share. Because I think society wise, the biggest push is to hold it down, be strong, and it's almost like we make it that those two things are mutually exclusive. Like, being strong is on one side and crying and showing emotion is on a whole nother side. Does that make sense?
It does. I think that women see men who cry as a man who cannot lead, or a man who cannot get his stuff together. If you are crying, then that means you are out of control. And so if I am a wife and you are my husband and you're crying in a situation, then that means you're not in control, and thus I feel unsafe. And I'm like, but why? That makes no sense to me. And so I feel like in a situation, a man can cry and still be in control. I don't believe that a wife should feel unsafe just because a man is showing emotion. But a wife sees that and she's like, you need to get yourself together, snap out of it. And
Yeah, there's got to be consistency.
You know what I'm saying? And I feel like that's crazy. And there have been some comments in the groups that I've asked this question to where a wife's like, no, it's not his job to cry, it's mine. And I'm like, that's dumb. That makes no sense to me. So, or they're like, if we're having an argument, there can only be one emotional person in the argument. And so I asked the question, and I hadn't been able to like get the response. But I'm like, if you guys are in an argument and you're upset and you cry, but he's equally upset, what does he do with his emotion? What is he supposed to do with the emotion that he's feeling? You feel it and you can cry. Right. He's feeling the same emotion. What is he supposed to do with it?
Listen,
that makes no sense to me.
I remember we were watching a movie, Central Intelligence, with The Rock and Kevin Hart, right? And
I already know what you're going to say.
You know that part where he's like, how do you deal with that? He's like, well, actually, I kind of just take all that emotion and I just kind of shove it way deep down inside and I just forget about it.
I think it's...
But hold on, but there's the part when Kevin Hart looks, he's like, man, that sounds really unhealthy.
It is.
Unhealthy.
I think it is unhealthy. And I think that as a society, I don't know where that came from. That men who cry are weak. That men who cry aren't in control of their emotions. Now, I will say...
Come on with it. I know where you're going.
That there are people who aren't in control.
Mm-hmm.
There are men who have been through trauma and who have emotional issues. And they've probably held it all in. And then all of a sudden, the emotional dam has broke through and they cannot control themselves. They are out of control.
Yeah.
Well, you need to seek some help.
Yeah, I agree. And so another thing I want to bring up too is so I saw this on WebMD, so it's true. This is what it says about crying, the health benefits of tears. Stress tightens muscles and heightens tension, so when you cry, you release some of that. Crying activates the parasympathetic nervous system and restores the body to a state of balance.
If you are stressed, crying is a good way to release that stress. What I will say is you should be in control of your situation.
Well,
that's all I'm saying.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think it's too many stigmas about it, especially for men, that it's crying is a sign of weakness. And the problem with that I see, especially as soon as I became a dad and I realized I'm raising a boy first. We want our boys to be men when they're 5 or 9. And it's yeah, they're growing up, but they're still little boys. And so often we throw out, be a man, suck it up, shake it off. How we kind of throw all that stuff out there. And I can't even tell you how life-changing it was to look at my son crying about something, or he might have actually fallen and hurt himself. And I'm like, man, you all right, shake it off. And I don't know that he's solely seeing it as my dad is encouraging me to be a better man, more than he's seeing it as, do you not care how I feel right now? And he may not know how to verbalize that right now, but he's going to grow up and become a man who passes that on. And of course there are times, especially in sports, where it's yo, you can't, Andy from The Office, you can't just sit here and cry. I can't too, just sit here and cry. It's okay, but you really can't. Context does matter. But I do think there is an aspect of understanding a situation where emotional expression is necessary. And we, as people who love those individuals, need to be responsible and emotionally available for that person. Because I feel there's definitely scenarios where I can see man, I probably would have been able to cry and get a lot of this hurt and pain and frustration and stress out of me, but I felt I needed to kind of close that off for whatever reason. Why? Because I don't want to feel judged by this person. I don't want to feel judged by that person. Again, just how it is. And I know there's a lot of guys out there that feel that way, is that I'm more so thinking about how I will be perceived as opposed to will I be restored back to a state of balance from letting this stuff out?
Yeah, and so just to kind of wrap up and give you guys you kind of already know how we feel about it, but to kind of wrap up and give you our overarching feeling towards wives and fathers. Wives, support your men, okay? And while you may not want your husband sitting on the floor of a grocery store bawling his eyes out,
Yeah.
your husband should be able to come home. And if he's stressed, he should be able to find comfort in his home.
Yeah, and safety.
He should be able to express his emotions, all of his emotions, in the comfort and safety of his home.
Facts.
And fathers.
Yeah, and fathers, I want to just encourage men out there.
Yeah.
Be emotionally available to your boys. I've told my son all the time, you are this is your life, and this is your birth, and this is when you die. This much is when you're going to be a kid, and this much is when you're going to be an adult. You have way more years as an adult. And so these few years that you get with your sons are really vital. And it's really important that he grows up learning how to check his emotions, how to understand what he's feeling, but also to be able to recognize and to see when he is in a safe situation where it's okay to express how he feels. Whatever that emotion is, even if it's crying, he's got to feel that safety, or else he's going to grow up and repeat the cycle.
So you should feel comfortable to cry with your son.
Oh, yeah.
And comfort your son and show him like, hey, it's safe here.
Yeah.
So we hope that you guys enjoyed this video.
Yes. I really hope we got the conversation sparked even more. So if you don't mind, go ahead and leave a comment in the comment section. Let us know what you think about any of the stuff that we're saying. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Which we find either way. And just kind of give us some more feedback so we can keep this conversation going. Because I think it's a really good topic.
Absolutely.
It's something that needs to keep being talked about.
Absolutely. And we absolutely would love to know if there's anything else that you would like for us to talk about. If you have any thoughts or suggestions that you would like to hear on our channel, we'd love to hear it. Go ahead and leave that also in the comment section below.
Yes. So if you're new here, we ask that you go ahead and click that subscribe button. Make sure you click the bell so that you can get notified every time we drop a new video. We typically drop on Thursdays every week, and we like to have these conversations where we just kind of stir some stuff up.
Yep.
So that's it.
Thank you guys for watching.
Thank you guys. We'll see you later.